before I get started, I'll just give you an overview of what I want to cover. So obviously I'm going to talk a little bit about Calix and what our company does. I tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to go through the three aspects of what we're doing to try and shape and plan our analytics strategy here at Calix. We're going to talk a little bit about the vision of what we're trying to achieve, the technical stack that we're building and the architecture, and then finally the organizational strategy that brings it all together so that we can actually deliver value to the organization. So those are the three main things that we want to cover, and along the way we'll explain a little bit about the details under each of those. So Calix. So we have been around since 1999. We have about 540 million in revenue last year. As a company, we are in a point of transition. So for the last, prior to about a year ago, we were selling primarily hardware into broadband service providers. And we've transitioned to offering services and software. And now we bring that all together. So we help service providers simplify their business, offer value for their subscribers, and grow their business using a combination of our hardware platforms in the home, in the last mile delivery, and then through the software. So my organization, we are focused on delivering the values to our operational business team. So I don't do analytics for our cloud-based platforms that we sell to customers. My team's associated with doing analytics for our business. So the operational parts of the business, our marketing team, our sales team, our success team, our support team, our product team as well. So that's the focus of my organization. So when I first joined Calix, we had sort of islands of business intelligence. So they were sprinkled throughout the organization. I was brought into the services organization to help build their analytics for their specific business. But as we've changed over the last couple of years, we're centralizing things. And so now we are all under a single umbrella, and we are a centralized resource. And so we've changed things, and we're building a common platform that we're all using. Before, everyone kind of did their own thing, and it was great from an agile perspective, but it was really bad from the perspective of getting the same answers from different organizations for the same questions. So anyway, that's where we're at. If you can flip to the next slide. So I'll start with the where we're at. So the purpose of our organization is to facilitate a move to a more data-centric enterprise. Of course, we've always used data, but it's been not as much of a focus. And what we're trying to do is drive a much more data-centric decision approach to making decisions in the organization. And we're here to support that change. And we're doing that using modern data operational processes. So we're adopting one of a new modern data stack, which Sean already mentioned a lot of the components of it. And the key here the way I think about this is data is the raw material. And at the end of the day, the outcome for the business is what we care about. And the point of leverage that we look to support is the point where someone in the business is making a decision. So I chose to call it decision science because I saw some talks and I thought that was an interesting way to think about it. And I always kind of think about, why would you name your process after the raw materials when the outcome that people want is good decisions for the business that drive positive business outcomes. So I chose to name analytics and decision science, and because I think that decision point is the point of leverage where I can drive engagement with my business partners. So if you go to the next slide, we talk a little, here I'm going to talk a little bit about more of the details of what it means for this. So really what matters is for the analytics organization to be a trusted partner to the business owners and the decision makers. And everything that we do is to get to the point where we are as trusted as we can be. People trust that the data that we're putting out is up to date, correct, and consistent. They trust that when we work with them, we're working with them with their best interests in mind. We understand the needs of their business. We have some domain knowledge, obviously not as deep as the business owner, but we work in partnership with them. So we're really trying to drive to that partnership approach. We're also trying to drive insights-based innovation within Calix. So what I mean by that is, my organization is relatively small. We have 800 people at Calix. My organization currently is, including contractors, about 15 people. And we do not have all the information. We can't drive all the data innovation in the business. We can support it. And what we're trying to do is drive data literacy into the organization, give them tools, and hopefully allow them to do data innovation, make good decisions. And if they do something cool, we'll bring it back and curate it in our centralized architecture. We're also looking at doing what everyone else is trying to do, move to a more machine learning augmented approach. We want to push the decision making and the data as far into the front lines of the organization as possible, so that when people are doing their work, they can sort of have the equivalent of a right click, get to the data they need while they're doing the process, and not have to go somewhere else. That's a vision. I don't think we've even come close to that yet. And then obviously we want to use modern version control, documented data operations processes. So we're going for that standard new vision of the data operations approach of the world. So that's what we're shooting for. That's the vision that drives our everything that we do. And so from the perspective of how we think about supporting the business, I kind of think of it as a 3-layer cake. I think another analogy that I actually think is really appropriate as well is, it's an iceberg, right? The tip of the iceberg, the decision support projects that we're doing are what the business actually cares about. All this foundational stuff that sits underneath it, the VP of sales doesn't care about it, right? The VP of marketing doesn't care about it, but it's a necessary thing that we deal with in order to generate that trust. So we think about it in 3 layers. We have the actual decision support projects that we deliver to the business. And to do that, we build upon a foundational set of systems and architecture, and we'll go into a little bit of details. And on top of that, we have a foundational set of data architectures. And these all work together. And unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of building out our foundations first before we deliver value to the organization. We have this legacy mishmash of stuff, and we can't tell the world, oh, stop, we're not doing anything more. We have to wait till we've built these foundations out. So we're taking, sometimes I call it a hacky approach, but I think I should rename it a pragmatic approach, because hacky just doesn't sound correct. Where what we're doing is we are delivering decision support projects regardless of where we happen to be at the foundational level. And then if we have to rewrite the plumbing later, we will do so. It does incur technical debt, but because our purpose is not to build the most perfect data pipeline, data reporting engine, it's to deliver value to the organization. That's what we are doing. So we're taking it in that approach. So we're taking a very pragmatic approach, and it does require that we incur some technical debt, but we're trying, the hope is over the course of the next year, hopefully by the end of this year, we will be a lot more stable in our foundations. So if we go to the next slide, I'll go through some of these foundational pieces. So what is the foundation of our system? And at the core of it is Snowflake. When I came into Calix, we had Oracle BI coming from an on-prem installation of Oracle ERP. We had Salesforce, and we have some of these other things, Pardot, and some vendor files that were being sent. We had another group that had built their own data mart system that was based on Oracle. And so, and then we actually had a bunch of Excel files hanging around in SharePoint and SFTP servers and all kinds of stuff. So, and when I came into the organization, I was like, well, where do I find data? And they said, no one could give me an answer. So what I ended up doing, what everyone else does, is I took, we were a Microsoft shop. I was not associated with the Salesforce. So what I would do is I would take Power BI, I would direct connect it to Salesforce, and I do very specific reporting. And everyone else was doing the same thing, even some business users who were technically savvy. And so we ended up having all these business logic was instantiated in the Microsoft Power BI reports, all the data transformations. People often didn't know other people were doing similar things. So as you can imagine, it caused quite a bit of problems. And so I started looking around for a new approach. And I started looking at some of the new cloud-based databases. I looked at Redshift. I looked at mostly Redshift, I think, and Snowflake. I determined Snowflake, this was a couple of years ago now, was the way to go. And so we did a POC, tried it out, and decided to go there. Then the next step was we needed a way to get data into Snowflake. I'm very much I didn't want to manage the details of moving data and extract and load. So we went with Fivetran. And as they added more and more connectors, we were able to get more and more data directly in with Fivetran. We had to use stream sets for a few things early in the process because there was some functionality of Fivetran at the time that was missing. It's now been rectified, so we moved more of that into Fivetran. And we're now using Lambdas to connect to APIs and systems that we can't handle with existing pre-built connectors. So we've basically moved to a Fivetran Lambda approach. We use Python to write the Lambdas, but stream sets is completely deprecated at this point. And then what we do is we use push that all into a data lake, and then once it's in Snowflake, the data lake portion of it, we use dbt as the abstraction layer to push SQL into Snowflake. That has a lot of benefits. We can use the same code base to do a production and development environment. It can be version controlled very easily through GitHub, and so it's a really nice place. We can push all of our business logic centrally into Snowflake, and then we also have built out Airflow as a system to control how the data moves from left to right in the system. So we're kicking off Fivetran jobs with Airflow. We then kick off, once the Fivetran job has been completed, we kick off some dbt DAGs, and then eventually what we want to do is have Airflow connect to Power BI and Einstein to kick off when they refresh their data sets. So that's a view of our systems, what I call our physical layer. It's not really a physical layer, but that's kind of the piece. That's what I call it. And then if you go to the next slide, we have a foundational reporting data architecture, and I will say that this is very much aspirational. we are not exactly where we need to be with this, and we're constantly trying to move in this direction, but we have a vision of where we're trying to go. We have data domains. We process them into relatively high-level dimension and fact tables. We then have what we call foundational data, what's the word? Things like the products 360, the customer 360, which are foundational data architectures within that. And then we process them into very specific data marts or information that's appropriate for visualization in the visualization tools. And so across the top of this, we are in the process of building out a security and user governance approach. We're very much in the early stages of that, but the vision is that we will have a centralized location to have user governance that will apply to all of our client visualization tools. So this is the final sort of foundational piece. We treat them separately, but they're obviously related. And then finally, if you go to the next slide, we have these projects. And the way I think about the projects is we have the foundational projects. So the Customer 360 is something where we, on a daily basis, will pre-calculate information at the grain of our customers, drop them into fields, and then allow our business users to filter customers for whatever purpose they want to do it with. We do that through some report. We can either curate it, and the vision is eventually to allow people to do it through some self-service mechanisms. So these are foundationals. We're going to turn on a product 360. We have a total addressable market view of the world. So these are foundational projects, and we evolve them over time as we do these really projects that are very specific to decisions that are being made in the organization. So we have entitlement reporting that's needed for our success team and our sales team. We have pipeline reporting that our sales team's interested in. We have supply chain information about what our suppliers are promising to us, what our POs are. We have booking reports. We have ad hoc reporting, et cetera. So all of those, often as we learn about what's being done in the business, we push, it's a feedback loop, and it pushes into these foundational projects as well. And then we have these meta projects. For example, Apollo 2 for us is the concept of a high-level dashboard for the execs to be able to log in and run the business or check it, see how the business exists. And once again, that's a feedback loop. It builds off these other projects that are sitting in the pink there underneath it. So that's the way we think about this. So far, so good. And so the next question is, how do we implement this through an organizational approach? And so if we go to the next slide. So, looks like we're missing a couple things, but that's fine. The way we think about it is the team has various different skill sets that are required. Most of my team is on the left of this, the data engineering and business analysis. The data engineers require coding, engineering, SQL, Python, Git, some of the orchestration tools. That's what the data engineering piece is. And then the business analysis is all about domain knowledge of the business that the person's supporting, the visualization skills, the ability to prototype solutions, working well with the end users. So there's a different set of skills for those. And then as we move forward, we want to get more and more into the machine learning side of things. And we are not there yet. And over time, we're going to be, once we've built out our foundation, the vision is some of these features that we've built out inside, for example, the Customer 360 will become the machine learning features that can drive, they're very dense information packages that can help drive some machine learning that's useful to us. So we're still early days on that. And then when we deploy it, a lot of it's more about a data catalog. We have problems where we have multiple reports across different parts of the organization. People don't know they exist. So we're investigating data catalog tools to help us with that. So there's a whole bunch of activities and skill sets required for us to do that. And we have to organize this in a way to support the vision for the organization. So if you go to the next slide, what we've done is we've broken it down into business analytics, and those are aligned very specifically with the organizations that they support. And then we have some shared resources. So we have an embedded reporting resource, mostly Einstein at this point. And we have a data engineering team. And those are shared resources for the group. And they manage the foundational aspects of it. So currently, we don't have a big data engineering team. In order to get rolling, we engaged with a consulting firm called Red Pill Analytics, and we're using a lot of their resources to help us build out some of the foundations. And over time, we're in the process of bringing the expertise back into the organization for DBT, et cetera, so that it was once again a pragmatic approach. We wanted to get going and then over time bring the appropriate level of knowledge back into the organization. So the business analytics folks, the way I look at them is that they are product managers, and their job is to understand the needs of our customers. They have to be technical, they have to understand SQL, they have to understand the client reporting tools in depth, but they also need to be very conversant, I guess, in the needs of the organizations that they're supporting, so that when they're working with a senior leader, they can have a conversation and they understand exactly what kind of decisions are being made, and then understand build a quick prototype. And we use Power BI for this right now. Build a quick prototype. Don't worry about pushing the business logic into Snowflake right away. Pull the data from Snowflake, do the transformations in Power BI if they don't already exist in Snowflake, iterate, get to a point where it makes sense. And then we want to take the data transformations and push them back into Snowflake so that they can be available to all the reporting tools that are coming from there. And so those folks are very much sort of, when we hire them, we look for domain knowledge and people with a technical ability as well. And then on the data engineering side, we're very much in the process of adding new we're trying to hire a data engineering manager, and we're adding some more people to the business analytics side of things, where we want to have the ability to flex resources, because right now we have a large need to do a lot of work, but long term we think that will taper off. So we don't want to bring in a lot of people and not have work for them in the future. So we're trying to match the goals of this 1 year push, and then eventually start bringing, once we understand the steady state, hire appropriately for that level. So that's the summary. So far so good. It's still an aspiration. Some of these slides are not done yet. We're not there yet, but we're definitely making progress and moving in the direction that's good for our company.
This has been really great. Tell me more about this organizational change that you're leading. And you mentioned SQL as a qualification for looking at hires and people. What else do you look for?
So, well, I mean, in a perfect world, they would know DBT, but that's a new skill, so that's not easy to find. So we're training people up in DBT on the business analytics side as well, so they can start helping out with the data engineering and transformations. But for example, I just hired a couple months ago a person to join our team who's focused on sales and success and services. And his role in a previous company was he ran their services organization and he ran their success organization, and he he ended up building a lot of this stuff because his IT organization wouldn't help him. And then he found out he liked it. And so what we did is we hired this person into Calix, and now he has the ability to understand completely what's going on in that organization. And he also has the technical ability and the bent to really build prototypes. So that worked well for us.
That's great. That's great. Tell me, like, what was the ultimate driver for Calix to move to this data ops driven process?
Well, we needed a single source of truth. We did not have data from Salesforce and Oracle coming together. We didn't have data or information from our suppliers, and so they were all running through 3 different processes. And so we needed to get it in one place, because then we could join it and do analysis that would be more rich across all these different data sources. And the fact that we were pushing business logic into, let's say 1,000, not 1,000, but let's say 200 different reports instead of in a centralized place, caused all kinds of problems. And that's what we're trying to sort out right now. We're trying to centralize as much as possible the business logic, and then use the client tools as presentation mechanisms, and choose the appropriate client tool based on where the information needs to be presented. Like Einstein is great when you're presenting it in Salesforce. It has a lot of embedded functionality that allows you to right-click down and take actions. Power BI is great when you want to get the data eventually in a place that maybe doesn't make sense to put in Salesforce, and maybe eventually wants to go into Excel, because for further analysis, it works great for that. So it kind of gives us more flexibility to reach the end goal of where we're trying to go.
Nice. One last question. We have about 3 minutes left. You had touched a little bit on data governance. How do you, can you dive into that a little bit more and tell us how you make sure people don't see sensitive data that they're not supposed to?
So right now, we are not doing that well. So right now it's driven at the client tool report level. We're in the process of building defining, not building, we're defining a centralized governance mechanism, with the idea that we will take the combination of like Okta SCIM integration into some of these client tools, along with data that's sourced from Active Directory and potentially territory data that's in Salesforce, centralize that. And we haven't figured out if we can do that directly in Okta, or have a set of tables that populate in Snowflake, and then just make sure that we're building like row level security functionality into Power BI and into Salesforce that draw on that centralized data source, to ensure that, like, if I build a report once, the row level security will carry forward into Power BI, so that if a person from the West can only see the Western territory, and also the same thing that would happen in Einstein and Power BI. But honestly, we're still figuring it out.
Cool. One more question before I let you go. The survey, you know, we ran through like 8 or 10 talking points in there. Were there any like aha moments, or like, oh, we just got done dealing with that? Were there any moments you found, but then also a learning tied to the insight that you saw?
So, I mean, I think the biggest issue is that the fact that the data is not clean, right? The data is not, organizing the data and cleaning it through the transformation process is priority number 1 before you can gain trust in the organization, right? Because if you build business logic on top of dirty data, it's a waste of time. So we are doing things like trying to build data checks through the DBT process. DBT allows you to do checks as you run these DAGs. And so we're doing a lot of things like that. And it's just the nature of the business, right? So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been a really, really good insight into your process and your flow, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.